from Grace Christian Fellowship, we wish you a happy new year. And we're thankful that God has enabled us to gather one more time here to share some very important things. I want to ask a question tonight. How many have ever felt inadequate? Well, you know, there's someone in the Bible that felt the same way, and his name was Moses. And I just want to read a few scriptures tonight before we open up in prayer. And it's found in Exodus chapter 4, that's the Old Testament, and verse number 10. Then Moses said to the Lord, "Oh, my Lord." How many have ever said that? "Oh, my Lord. I'm not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." So the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth, or who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord?" Verse 12 says, "Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall say." You know, I don't know what your spiritual situation is, but every day I get up, I'm saying, "Lord, I need you. I need the help of God in all things." And even when we speak, we need God to help us. And even in this battle that we're in, how many know we need God to help us? I'm going to invite you to stand, and we're just going to open up in prayer. Father, we thank you that you have bestowed your grace and mercy upon us. We thank you, Lord, that you gave us the strength to come here tonight. We thank you for this meeting time. We thank you that you have gathered those of like mind and like heart together, that we may learn, that we may grow in knowledge. So, Father, I pray that you will bless those that are presenting tonight, and I'm going to ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. You may be seated.
I am extremely grateful for your community, that you are willing to provide a place for us to speak and share and not be censored, but create an environment where we together can actually learn how to trust each other, see each other's faces, know each other's names, start rebuilding back the power that we have when we are a healthy community. Tonight, I find this really interesting that historically you should never talk about religion and politics, and yet here we are going to be doing both in the same night in a way that we're going to see that we actually can benefit from incorporating both spiritual life into our active life, and that as we live out our active life, it contributes to our spirit life. Tonight, I'm going to just give a little bit of an introduction about who Kootenai Tribe is, because mostly people just go, "Who the heck is Kootenai Tribe?" I get it. We're going to talk a bit about what is occurring in our community in the last couple of years, some urgent things that are coming up in the next few months, both at the RDCK level and the provincial level, that need your attention. And I'm also going to be introducing a buddy to you. He's going to come and speak for 15, 20 minutes just on the environment that we find ourselves in now. After that, we're just going to have some open time, because it's extremely important that the public has opportunities to engage. And so we are going to include that closer to the end. I'm hoping that all the talking will be done within an hour. Should be no problem to do that, because it's now about, there are things that we need to discuss as a group. My name is Corinne. I am from Nelson. Over the last year, before that, the last couple of years, I'm sure that you have noticed that there has been some dramatic changes in how our government is treating us. And for many of us, during the time frame that it started, we were under distress. So there was a lot of fear, uncertainty. We had never actually encountered this kind of treatment before. And so there was a reaction to it that is understandable. But as we progressed through that, now we've also had to work through the process of some of the damage that was done. And for many of you, you lost close relationships. There was a lot of judgment. Financially, your businesses were shut down. For many of you, you took loans that the government was more than happy to provide, and now they're calling it in. The financial impact is becoming much harder to climb out of. And we started now to understand the depth of the repercussions that we experienced under the decisions that were being mandated down to us. And it caused a lot of grief. And so here we are as a people who are not necessarily equipped to know how to stand your ground. We've been a peaceful country for a couple of generations. We don't have the experience necessarily to know how to stand up for ourselves. And so now we're having to learn this, and we're learning it on the fly. And no one here is an expert in this. We're making this up as we go. I'm not going to tell you otherwise. But what we do have is we have identified people in our communities who have determined that no matter what the cost, they are going to protect the rights of the individual. They're going to protect your rights to personal autonomy. They're going to step in and protect your rights to your personal property. And as a result, there has been an increased reaction from just the average person holding accountability to the government officials that have been imposing decisions on us that have been oppressing us. Kootenai Tribes is one network. All over the region, all the way from up the valley to Burton, Argenta, Creston here, Nelson. There have been small groups of people that have been forming groups. And all of them have their own little unique battle that they are taking on. And so what we decided we needed to do was just to create a communication network. We were starting to understand that we're getting censored, we can't get on social media, we can't get the accurate information out. And so that was really the priority of what we called Kootenai Tribe, was just to make sure that we had the ability to communicate with everyone in a way that they were getting accurate information. So that's what we've been doing, collecting emails. We have a little website called Kootenai Tribe where we're trying to post information, and we're just trying to make sure that everybody knows you're not alone, okay? Fundamentally, there is a very basic principle here that we have to acknowledge. We will not have consensus. We have all sorts of different beliefs, all sorts of different values, experiences, points of view. That is humanity. But what we do have is the ability that on the 20% that we do agree on, that we could actually come together, figure out how to make that work better, and start rebuilding what has been taken from us. So that's the position that we're taking. We're not telling you what to believe. We're not telling you which project you need to focus on. We're saying your job right now is to find out what activates you. This is where spirit comes in. We have been, for most of our lives, institutionalized. We have been told what to believe. We go to jobs that tell us how we're allowed to talk, how we do our job, that your input is not important. You go to school, you repeat back what you're told. We have this It's just inputted into us that we are susceptible, that it's easy to tell us and influence us. This point in time is for you as an individual to find out who you are. What do you really believe? What are you willing to act on? What are you willing to pay the price for? Because democracy is not just going and voting every 3 years. Democracy is understanding your own individual purpose and being empowered to ensure that what you know is right and protective is enforced. And currently, right now, our system is actually built quite well. You have the Medicare Act that states that you have the right to personal autonomy. What we don't have is anybody enforcing it. So what we have is we have an infiltration of people into positions of leadership that are not honoring the agreements that were established for us to prosper, to benefit from our work, to be successful and fruitful, and to be able to prosper. Instead, we have felt safe and allowed decisions to be made that are systematically removing the capacity for us to prosper. Never mind prosper. How about just pay the electric bill with the carbon tax? Right? We're losing our ability to financially sustain our own selves. We're losing the ability to have relationships with people that have a different opinion than us. When we focus on the war in Israel and Gaza and Ukraine and Russia, those wars didn't just happen. They happened because in communities, people started feeling that they had the justified right to be hostile to their neighbor. And so the very fundamental thing that we have to, as humans right now, is to make sure that our ability to be human is not compromised. Because if we don't have that in place, there is no way that we as a community can actually move together in a force. So when I was speaking earlier about the component of religion and politics, I repeat back that we cannot as a society exhibit the qualities that we say we believe, justice, moral code, ethics, unless it is something that has gone beyond a word in your own heart. And every one of us is going to be up against a wall where we're going to have to look at that and go, okay, what do I really believe? Does integrity actually mean something to me? And then you'll see. And it happened to me. I had to make a decision. I was actually pleasantly surprised to find out that I really did indeed believe that people had a right to personal autonomy. I didn't know it until that moment. And then when I followed through with that, it was like, wow, I'm so glad to know that about you. Because sometimes we don't know who we really are and what we can bring to the table. And so this is what we're trying to do now, is just try to spark within you the knowledge that you are unique, you are spectacular. The job is not that everyone has to conform to the same thing. The job is, in our magnificence, we honor that in each other and know that in the progression of the journey of our lives, we can give space to each other to allow that growth to happen without judgment. And in order to do that, we need people who are willing to be examples of that. So that's what I'm calling for. I'm calling for those who will take on that mantle, who will say, yeah, I can do that. I can be an example of what a good human looks like. And you, in your own ways, will figure out how to do that. That is the story of Kootenai Tribe. We have, I have an email list at the back that if you're not on the email list and you would like to be, please sign up there. There's a few things back there. We've got a jar there for any donations that would go towards the hall rental. We are just average people. We are not a society. We do not get government funding. This is all supported by individuals who are willing to pay the costs for this. So there's a jar for that. We are also, part of this is we're introducing the Conservative BC Party. Okay, who all hates politics? Thank you. I have never been interested until it became people like us having to fight to protect ourselves. And then it became way better than Netflix. And I've been really enjoying it now. Because it's about how people make decisions together. And that has been way more, not just interesting, but definitely entertaining. We are getting signals that there is going to be a provincial election coming up in probably March or April. This is much sooner than what it was planned for October. The current government under the NDP, please vote for whoever you want, okay? This is not for us to tell you who to vote for. Under this current administration, they have increased government workers by 36%. The carbon tax is going through the roof. My last bill, $300 electric bill, 78 of it was carbon tax. And that's at $60 a ton. It is supposed to go to $176 a ton, which would mean on a $220 electricity bill, the carbon tax will be $240. That's what you're looking forward to. That's just on one bill, okay? We have increased taxation on used vehicles where they tell you what you're paying, not what you actually paid for the vehicle. There's even tax on carbonated beverages, and I'm guessing maybe that's because there's carbon. I don't know. We've seen an annihilation of healthcare. So all I'm saying is there are people that will be loyal to the NDP, and I get it. But at least hold them accountable because they're killing us. So as a result, there's a new party that's kind of risen out, the Conservative BC. It started from a man who was kicked out of the Liberal Party because he said right now in this province, in this country, we are not in a climate emergency and we don't need to be taxing people to death. So he was kicked out of the party for that. So he started the Conservative BC Party. Their fundamental position is other parties are, they have to vote along party lines, so whatever the party says. This one, it is part of their policy that your MLA has to represent the constituents. So that's just a fundamental piece that we have to start slowly adjusting. The things that are going to be needing to be fixed are going to take a very long time. But if you're starting with a fundamental position that our job is to support the creation and distribution of resources to our people in a way that they can prosper and have protection, then you can make any other plan out of that. So I'm just going to say conservativebc.ca. You can go on there if you want more information. So we're just introducing it, okay? What else do I need to say? Is there anything about Kootenai Tribe specifically? Yeah, we're just people, okay? Just average people. So we're making this up as we go, but there's been some pretty incredible people that have risen to the surface here, and we are quite equipped with those who have a big picture understanding, and there is actually support all across the province with different networks that are really actively working. And I know sometimes when you're just on your own, you don't know that there's so much effort that is going into protecting your rights, but it is happening. So that is my job, to connect this region together alongside with all of what you guys are doing in your community. And then we also are connecting with other networks all across the province because people are trying to be engaged and trying to participate. So I want to introduce you to Joel. Joel, come on up. Joel has just moved here the last few months. I'd like you guys to take him under your wing. This young man, he's got a lot of education and he's got a lot of passion. Now, if you look across the audience right now, you're going to see that most of us are whiteheads. I call this the war of the whiteheads. We are the people that understand the potential of what could be coming, right? The younger generation does not have that same experience to be able to appreciate the amount of conflict that we could be engaged in. Joel is at least willing to step into this forum. And so I want to encourage that because he has lots to say, but he still needs me from the front seat going, okay, you're wandering, it's too long, whatever. So if you see hand signals, I'm on it, okay? So I'd like him to just kind of share his perspective. I want you guys to get to know him because he does need to be in community with you. And then I'm going to come back. I'm going to talk about the specific things that are going on with the regional district that you need to be aware of. And then we'll go into the public time. Does that sound okay? Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Probably for good reason. First off, I want to thank the Lord for giving me the strength to be here today and speak to you. Second, although I am a riding association member at large for the BC Conservative Party, I'm not here to really talk platform, or I would never dare represent the party. I don't want to get in trouble. I'm a freedom fighter, and that's really kind of what I'm here to talk about, but perhaps connect the dots so that we as a people can work together and reclaim the democracy that we've lost. I'm on draft 5 of my notes. They've all been different. Last night I decided the last minute just to wing it. It's been years since public speaking, and I realize I've had probably a few too many concussions to just rely on ad lib and winging it. So I'll be on script tonight, so don't mind me looking at my phone. It's not that I want to, have that great connection with you. I just want to kind of keep focused, okay? I want to cover a fair bit of ground in a short period of time, so buckle up. Don't worry if there's too much turbulence. I'll ground us with focus, okay? First off, I'd like to thank Corinne and the Kootenai tribe for bringing me here. I'd like to thank the homesteaders here for lending me an ear. And especially, I'd like to give my land acknowledgement to thank Grace Community Church for offering us the beautiful space to gather in. Please give a round of applause for all the organizers and the hosts. My name is Joel Warren. I'm new to the Valley. Been here 3 months and about 2 days from now. My wife and I moved here from the coast for all the right reasons. It's a lost cause out there right now, but the Kootenays give me hope. I'm a human rights researcher, but I'll do my best not to get all academic on you and put you to sleep. So I think this is probably a universal problem, but just to kind of get us all kind of on the same page before I really go on, who here has been going about their day, attention's elsewhere, and then noticed you stepped in something rather unpleasant? Does that ever happen to anybody here? Yeah? Okay. Well, that's where we are as a society right now. Only what we have stepped in doesn't just stink, but it's also a leg trap. Follow me, this theme's going to continue. I've got a few more questions just to kind of see, again, where we're at. First off, and various topics, so don't think one's necessarily leading to the other, but just variety. Trying to read the room here, get to know people in the town. Okay. Who wants, show of hands, who wants the public school system putting your child onto the assembly line of genital mutilation and a lifetime of pharmaceutical dependency? Anybody in the back? No? All right. Guess we're all on the same page here. All right. Next one. Who believes that those who died in World War II so that the Nuremberg Code could be developed should be disrespected such that our right to informed consent is no longer protected, and that QR codes and medical apartheid replace it? Who believes they died for that? Okay, yeah, cool. Nobody in the back? All right. All right, who also here, who here believes that some bureaucrat in Victoria should be able to impose one-size-fits-all policies to override private medical decisions? All right, cool. Nice to meet you. Yeah, all right, here's one. A little bit out of left field here, right field, whatever you want to call it. Somebody said this at some point in history. I'm not going to tell you who. I'm going to leave it to you to guess, maybe by a show of hands. But the quote effectively was, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, "There is a class war being waged. The rich class are waging it, and they're the ones winning." Who said this? Was it A, Karl Marx, or was it B, Warren Buffett? A or B? What do you folks think? Yeah, exactly. That was Warren Buffett. He was on Lou Dobbs in 2005 or 6 show in 2006, and he said that. Now, that was in 2006. That was what? Almost 20 years ago. Think of all that's happened since. Now, here's another one that's a little bit more think and ponder. With artificial intelligence that is set to disrupt so many jobs and cause so much unemployment, and with our federal government drowning Canadians in more new people than we can technically and infrastructurally absorb at the pace they're bringing them on us, when you do the math, how do you imagine that the conflict that arises from these contradictions will be contained? Because seams burst. I've gained a few too many pounds. Some of my things don't fit, and eventually stuff, it's just a matter of volume and capacity, and it creates problems. So, however, we, my fellow citizens, these sorts of developments, these don't occur by accident. They don't occur in a vacuum. There are billions of dollars going into the government. They pay people who have multiple degrees in research on a variety of capacities. These things don't happen by accident, but they have occurred. And they have occurred because we, as a collective people, have been asleep at the wheel for a long, long time. We have been either too busy working too hard or too busy enjoying one of the best places in the world, and we have allowed the worst among us to take the positions of power and restructure the rules of the game in a way that works against us. Not just us in this room, but us as a collective, as a nation, as a province, as a tribe. However we want to geographically define ourselves. We can no longer afford to be complacent. But how did we get here? How do we get here? It doesn't just happen out of the blue. Just wake up one day, although it may have seemed like that about 4 years ago. I'll briefly cover a few developments in both philosophy and social and political evolution that might shed some light on our dilemma. Don't worry, it's not going to be a year-by-year basis. I'm going to cover a bit of time, though. Back in 1791, a philosopher named Jeremy Bentham, he was known for kind of two things, the philosophy of utilitarianism. The greatest good for the greatest number. Who's heard the greatest good before recently? And how that's been imposed on us, rammed down our throat, and been the kind of structuring ideology that has forced us into things that we would never have willfully chosen on our own. A few years later, Thomas Malthus did an essay on population, where he basically said that the growth of humanity, or the growth of numbers of population, exceeds the ability to meet the resources and produce the food needed to keep them fed. And so therefore, consequently, there needed to be a big focus put upon the control of reproduction of people. You can maybe figure out for yourself how those two go in hand, but that's going to be a theme I'll get to later. In 68, so I'm jumping ahead about 170, 200 years almost, there's a book called The Population Bomb written by Paul Ehrlich. It was basically saying, same sort of thing. It was Malthus, but in the contemporary era, that said that population grows at an exponential rate, food production grows linearly. Fact of the matter is, science, technology, human ingenuity, industrial capacity, liberating the forces of creativity in the human population have blown that theory out of water ever since Malthus first wrote it. But it was a very fundamental book in terms of how certain sectors of the population view the world and how it might best be managed. A few years later, the Club of Rome wrote a book called The Limits to Growth, saying that industrial development, technology, and efficiency was going to create a catastrophe and the planet would be uninhabitable, everything else. I mean, these are some of the founding documents of what has gone into become and what we would normally think of in the term of globalism today. Big global thinkers with big grandiose ideas that have been completely destroyed by actual facts in the ground, but these ideas haven't died nonetheless, because the Warren Buffett type folks want this thought to be perpetuated, because it creates the conceptual framework that'll, if propagated enough, allows folks like us to be controlled, subjugated, taxed to death, and because let's be honest, it's the middle class that is the foundation of democracy, and that's why folks who have some very disingenuous ideas for humanity want to eliminate the middle class, and why there have been policies put in place over the recent decades to do the best to make sure that happens. 1975, Trilateral Commission. I don't know if anybody's heard of them. It was basically a giant think tank between Japan, Western Europe, North America, and they put together a study. It was called The Crisis of Democracy, and an author named Samuel P. Huntington, who back in the 90s wrote a book called The Clash of Civilizations and the Remaking of World Order. He argued that there is a crisis of democracy. There is too much of it, and that it's become ungovernable. But he went on to kind of describe what the implications for that were, is that like the biggest corporations were, not making enough profit. Literally, it's in the document. You can read it. I'm not going to, if you want any of these things, come to me later or ask Corinne. I can send you the links. Most of them are PDF now. Didn't I skip ahead a little bit? 92, United Nations Earth Summit in Rio. The creation of Agenda 21. Like 21 is 2021, although one might have wondered in 2020 if that's where they really were going. But no, it was like 21st century. Like, what was the program? I'm not going to go too into it right now, but and it's a new thing that's just kind of come on the horizon. There's research is only emerging, but if you want to know about a natural asset company, make that note, look it up, look at some of the more critical discussions on it. It's rather scary. I'm not going to go into it, but just pointing that out. What I'm trying to do is, here's some guideposts along the way to get us to where we are right now. In 2000, there was a document published by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. His name was, I forget off the top of my head. He was the one on the name of the document, and it was called Joint Vision 2020. And what it proposed was that going forward was to establish what they called full spectrum dominance. I don't know how foreboding that is to you. It doesn't exactly sound like a lullaby to me. But it and part of how they described it was effectively a seamless integration between kind of like boots on the ground security cameras, all the way up to the different branches of the like law enforcement, through the different branches of the military, through to space, satellite, and coordination, seamless integration, unified command structure of all these sorts of things. One can look at, because they didn't have the technology now, of thinking like, oh, well, this could very easily include your bank accounts, what you spend, where you go. Your phone tells them all that sort of stuff, all your emails, what you send. That whole stuff seamlessly integrated into a single unified command structure to secure the world. Now, I'm just going to go off on another little bit of a tangent here. Security, safety. We all heard the term safe and effective enough times in the last several years. We probably want to, we just cringe when we hear it. There's a famous quote back in, again, also the late 18th century by an author named Samuel Johnson. He was the original author of the English dictionary. He said this quote, you may have heard it before: patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. He had his political views in his time. I'd like to take that phrase and reframe it for the contemporary era and say that safety is the last refuge of the totalitarian. Then we get to 2001. Whatever you think happened, I'm not going to get into the 9/11 report. I'm not going to look into the laws of physics or anything like that. I'm just going to simply say the important part of it is the erosion of civil liberties, the ramping up of surveillance, the development of legislation that allowed those in charge to circumvent all sorts of rules and regulations with regard to search and seizure laws, things like that. All sorts of civil liberties became, were eroded in the process. Now you combine that with the advanced technology that has developed in the last 23 years or whatever, and you get an idea of the current quandary we're in. And then you hit 2008, the financial crash and the bailouts. That wasn't a very popular thing. We know who won that. We know who won on that one. It wasn't us. No. But there was a backlash to it. First off, it came in the form of the Occupy movement in Wall Street. Well, that was quickly stomped out because they pushed a whole bunch of politically correct people in to go and break it up. And then the sensible folks reemerged in the United States. They were known as the Tea Party. They later became the MAGA movement, which, of course, we know who that led to. And that, of course, if you're the masters of the universe who have a very distinct agenda, it's a bit of a wrench in the gears. Wasn't what they were looking for. Wasn't what they were hoping for. Also led to Brexit, same sort of thing. In more recent times, led to Geert Wilders. A few years back, it led to Viktor Orban. It's led to a bunch of places and parts of the world that are starting to push back and say, hey, Klaus Schwab, that snake oil you're peddling, we don't want it. Then also in 2016, not just the election, it's just a famous little video that was completely scrubbed from the internet, except for those who managed to keep it, save it, and put it, archive it, and put it on their own page. The World Economic Forum had this nice little video, 10-point thing, but the main theme of it was by 2030 you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. It envisages the elimination of the middle class. Why? Because the middle class is the only one that is not so dependent upon the system, that it actually has something to stand up for and has some minor foothold upon which to speak up. You get to 2019, and this is probably something you haven't heard about what happened in the latter quarter of 2019. We all know what happened in the latter quarter of 2019, but here's something most of you probably haven't heard of because it's not something they like to talk about. So unless you were following the financial papers, you probably never heard of it. By mid-September, think what happened in the following months, but in mid-September, there was an emerging financial crisis in the repo market, the repurchase agreement market. This has to do with the overnight lending rate between the major banks on Wall Street, where in a matter of days it went from, because remember, interest rates were so low, they were like just barely above zero, that people who wanted to borrow money could get money, get it really cheaply, go and invest it, make tons of money in the stock market, whatever, right? So the banks had lent more than they were allowed to. And that, they have to keep a certain level of reserve on hand by law, that is like the minor percentage and they're able to lend out the rest of it. Well, they'd all leveraged themselves out so much, they'd lent so much, they'd overlent so much that none of them could cover their overnight reserve requirements. Some of them could, some of them couldn't, but so few of them could that it upbid how much they were willing to pay each other from 1% to 10%. That, without getting too technical, that was on the verge of another 2008 level crash with another major banks and everything that went along with it. So consequently, quietly, unless you're reading the financial papers, the U.S. Federal Reserve papered it over for months with tens of billions of dollars every day. For months. The system needed another bailout, and it needed more money printing, but it needed it done in a way that would not have further fanned the flames of populism or created hyperinflation. So the lockdowns, as much as they did us so much good for our health and our businesses, what they effectively did was put a stranglehold on the real economy, not the financial sector. The financial sector was being flooded with cash because they needed liquidity. But the real folks who really needed liquidity were strangled and starved and given these like little checks that they're now wanting the money back for, because they didn't want to create hyperinflation. I'm not going to get into the healthcare aspects of it. But anyways, it also allowed for, you got to think, no government could just put this in place if you had the giant media apparatus questioning what was really going on, or if the biggest corporations in the world weren't, kind of in cahoots. So I'm sure you all noticed the massive wealth transfers from the middle to the ruling classes. How much more did Bezos make, Zuckerberg make? All of these people who are, they have more than enough. I think we could all get by on the interest in their, any of their savings accounts and get by quite comfortably. So they didn't need more, but they got more because, or the media, same sort of thing. They were getting paid. How about Trudeau's famous comment about, what was it, $600 million? They got very good reason to do what I say. Sorry, I digress. But anyways, now I'm going to bring it back to when I was discussing the panopticon. Jeremy Bentham, that was the other thing he talked about, was the panopticon. And this was in the late 1790s. The panopticon was basically his design for prison control. Pan, meaning all, optic, seeing. All-seeing eye. I've watched Lord of the Rings, so have you probably, but it's the same concept, being, and that the prisoners would self-regulate. They didn't need to have guards walk around with sticks beating them down if they stepped up, said the wrong thing, didn't do what they were told. They were constantly monitored. It was a design. It was a sketch design of how something like a model of this would work. Well, the technology didn't exist back then, but it does now. And so, back to the panopticon, full spectrum dominance, the greater good, or contact tracing, or QR codes. Remember those things? Yeah, they were fun, weren't they? So be under no illusion. Totalitarianism has now been extended from simply the outer physical security of certain parts of the world in places that none of us would really want to live, and it's been injected into your veins. It's been drilled into your psychology, and that data has been collected digitally. Medical freedom, as we previously understood it, has been eroded. Freedom of expression has been sacrificed. Privacy is practically non-existent. Perhaps lawyer-client privilege is next, or doctor-patient confidentiality. We don't know yet. Censorship and deplatforming are not enough for these control freaks now. Hold the wrong views, and it's been shown in Canada, you can be debanked. Whatever you think about the medical approach during the pandemic, I will call it the pandemic, have no doubt that it was a social engineering experiment. How far can they push people from liberal democracy into a dictatorship that is run by a bureaucracy and designed by a self-serving corporate elite? If you think that was bad, wait till Corrine tells you later about Bill 31, the Emergencies Act, which in short version allows the BC government to declare an emergency for unspecified reasons, enter your home without a warrant, take your property, kill your livestock, and who knows what else for who knows what cause. What, you didn't sacrifice enough carbon tax to appease the climate gods? Maybe they'll take your firstborn and give it gender-affirming care. We don't know yet because the policy is cryptic. And we do not know what the real aim is, but we do know it is a program being implemented around the world over. We do know that in Saskatchewan, similar language was passed in 21. We do know that this has been enacted within the same time frame as the, give or take a few months, as the federal government has been ramping up online censorship and has been grabbing guns. It's been happening at the same time as emergencies management enforcement is being offloaded onto the local level, and is happening at the same time as the World Health Organization is trying to convince every country to ratify a pandemic treaty that would give them supreme executive power to override national sovereignty and dictate policy. What we do know is that it takes some of the most authoritarian provisions of the 1914 War Measures Act and puts them into policy in BC. Which begs the question, who's the provincial government at war with that it needs the War Measures Act? What we need to appreciate is that that is the bureaucrats like Bonnie Henry, at least, nominally running the show, but they are unelected and unaccountable. Elected officials are simply doing public relations for the bureaucracy. We are not voting for parties. We are voting for a brand of marketing that elected officials use to sell the public on what the bureaucracy dictates. Civil society institutions are needed. That's a talk for another day. A party not institutionally compromised by either the bureaucrats or the global finance, whether it be the Union of Liberals or the NDP, we need an alternative because between the two of them, they've, at least at the provincial level, they've got us into this mess. While we were asleep at the wheel, collectively as citizens, we look around, we blame each other for that, and we all need to take some responsibility and admit that. Over the last several decades, these sorts of things got passed. We weren't paying attention. We can't do that no more. Yes, I am a member of the BC Conservatives. I would have never thought to have joined them ever in my life. But there was a few things about them that stood out that made them distinct from the rest. One, there's medical freedom from bureaucratic overreach embedded in the party. They're the ones that are trying to fire Bonnie. Have they done everything right? No. But they've got a few things that I think are kind of key, and I think a lot of us can probably agree on. They want to put an end to identity politics. They want to give parental rights back. They want to reclaim democracy from the bureaucrats and put power back in the hands of the constituents and at least have the opportunity to create the potential to liberate our communities from external self-interested agendas. I can keep going on, trust me, but time, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. If you got any questions, I'm around. If you're interested in the party at all, there's a non-member sign-up form out there if you just want to get information. If you want to join, there's also documents out there you can do so with. Thank you again, Corrine. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Grace Church. Thank you, Lord.
Are you guys doing okay? Can you handle another 10 minutes? Okay. I'm going to get into the business part of stuff. So a lot of you are super educated, and what I'm going to say is going to be a repeat, but I do need to just bring it forward for those who don't understand. In Canada, we're not necessarily taught very much about government and politics in our education system. I know that I had to do a crash course over the last couple of years. We have the federal level, which is things that impact all of Canada. So your Supreme Court, your national defense, your NAFTA agreements. Then you have your provincial government level, and usually that level is responsible for your social services, so your education, your healthcare, your highways. Then we have your municipal level, which BC is one of the only provinces that uses the umbrella of a regional district. We have 28, I think, regional districts in BC. In our regional district, every municipality, so a city, town, village, and the outlying areas are all governed under the umbrella of the regional district. There are 20 elected board members that sit at the board for the regional district. Last year was an election year, so this crew has been in for a year, and I believe 11 of them are new. So it was quite a learning curve for them to step in while things have been getting a little bit more fun. From there, so really the hierarchy is with the board of directors, they swear an allegiance to the public, to the residents. So the hierarchy is that the public is supposed to engage with the board of directors, who then represent what the public wants. The board of directors has one employee, the chief administrative officer, who is currently Stuart Horn. They give direction to him. He oversees all of the staff at the RDCK. Stuart Horn is not trained as an administrator. He was the chief financial officer in prior to 2013. They couldn't find an administrative officer, and so they put him into that task. When he took over that position, the organizational chart of all of the managers that are in the RDCK fit on one page. Currently, we need 15 pages to list all of the management. So some of the things that we discovered. We started going, really what kicked it off was we found out that they were going to be voting through the Climate Action Plan without any public consultation, which is illegal. So 60 of us showed up at that board meeting. They had to delay it. They had to then schedule the town hall meetings to discuss this, at which point then they brought out that we were an angry mob and canceled all the meetings, which we actually had recording evidence to show otherwise. And we just went ahead and scheduled our own town halls. And so this all organically spread up all over the region. People just did it themselves. And we kind of went from town hall to town hall, helping as needed. But this was all in direct response to each community being concerned and given the chance to actually talk in the microphone and express their concerns. So from that point, that's when we started attending more board meetings to find out what was going on. A couple accountants worked with me to go over the financial statements, and we compiled a bunch of information that we sent out in a pamphlet that many of you received in the mail, which was all paid for by just average people, okay? So some of the things we discovered, 2017, the RDCK had collected $26 million in taxes and revenue. By 2022, due to the increased assessments and development that had occurred, they're already collecting $36 million, which is an almost 40% increase. At the same time, you will have noticed last year that your taxes, depending where you lived, went up another 6 to 10%, as your user fees are going up. So we just noted that the transfer station tipping fees have gone up another 10%, and that's actually the second increase last March. They also went up 10%. So we started looking at, okay, what's actually going on in that office? Because what we're finding is there's a lot of staff. The actual efficiencies of the system are very poor. When you talk to builders, you can't get building plans approved, you can't get planning moving through. There's, when you talk about levels of bureaucracy, what it is it's layers of regulations that just keep getting thicker and thicker and cost you more and more money before you can do anything. I was talking to one builder who has a client that has already spent $70,000 in engineering for landslide, water, foundation. We haven't even started the design of the house. We haven't gotten the permit because the RDCK is requiring all of this engineered reports in order to approve something, and then they have a level of engineers that have to approve what the previous engineers did. This is not cost effective. Okay. We also discovered in the process as we were going through previous agendas and minutes that, we don't know how our directors are actually voting. And it came to our attention that they don't record their votes. So all of these meetings, they are not recorded for the public. They take place on a weekday. The only way that you would know what's going on is if you attended that meeting in person. This is not acceptable. You have a right to know how your representation is making votes on your behalf. We brought it through our director, Cheryl Graham, Area E. She put through a proposal in September asking that now all votes be recorded. Only 4 of 20 voted in agreement of that. They are refusing to be held accountable for the decisions that they are making on our behalf. We also discovered that in the board meetings, they'd run through stuff, there'd be no discussion, and they'd vote. So then we clued in, actually most of the decisions are made at the committee level. So now if you go onto the RDCK website, under events, there is a calendar format where you can go in and hover over, and it will show you all of the committee meetings that are going to be occurring with the agenda minutes attached. And so what we've done as part of our network is now we're doing online Zoom sessions for people to get some training on how all these work. And then we have been divvying up the work. So different people will go to the meetings. You can get onto them online. And then somebody will take notes. And it's really interesting, the kind of information that you get. I sat in on a parks one where they were talking about purchasing land over at Rosebud Lake in Salmo for a park. And they wanted to use it for, the Conservation Society wanted to use it as a grizzly habitat and turtle corridor thing. $1.2 million. And when it comes to parks, the directors do not have to inform the public. They can just make that decision. So these are the kinds of things that you learn while you're in these meetings. So we are doing that, okay? Now, the couple of things that really spurred on us promoting the fact that we have to now start doing these town halls right now, there are 2 things that have just occurred. At the Board of Director meeting in December, it was November. It was brought up from staff that they felt that they were getting a little overworked. Now, for all of you, I don't know if you're aware, but every area has an official community plan. So your town of Creston would have one, my Area E has one, except we don't because we decided we didn't want one. So some communities do not have them, but most do. This is called an OCP for short. In your official community plan, this is where your area determines what kind of bylaws, zoning, regulations that you are going to create for your community. Every community has been able to construct their own. So during this meeting, the staff brought forward, this is too much work for us. Do you know, everybody's got their own rules. It's just really hard for us to have to find out what their rules are and, implement that, and somebody else has got different rules. So we propose that we collapse all of the individual OCPs and create one regional one, where all the zoning and bylaws will apply to everybody. So I found that was interesting because in the same week, BC legislature, where the laws are created, brought in Bill 44, which is the new residential development initiative that they're implementing. So currently our provincial government has created a crisis with housing because they are bringing in a lot of immigration that we don't have capacity for. In order to address this housing need, they are now dictating that any development that happens within certain corridors of bus routes in certain population groups, they are going to be able to dictate that it will be multi-unit development. They determine how many units and what the construction looks like. And this will all be enforced through that regional OCP. So now we have a problem where it has also been asked who's paying for this. Because if you are watching the news, Asuyas is in a big protest right now because in 1 year their property taxes are going up 40%. This is because of all the development that has been going on, and they have not been keeping up with their infrastructure. So the costs are going to be downloaded to the taxpayer. So to create all this affordable housing, they're wanting municipalities to donate land, which is land that you should be getting tax revenue from. They're going to dictate the size of development, but they're not going to contribute to the cost of all the services that are needed for that. That will come off of your backs. Now, I know in Nelson, we're already dumping sewage into our river. But when the provincial government implements this, their authority will supersede the municipal level. So if this goes through, you will have no say over what happens in your community. They're going to remove the process of public hearings. So I just want you to be aware of that, okay? Second issue. Oh, and interestingly, the mayor of Summerland actually wrote an article. He mentions that while the legislative changes are understandable in light of the urgent need to address the housing crisis, taken together, they will have significant impacts on municipal finances and capacity, as well as on local self-determination. We are raising concerns about how we could possibly upgrade our infrastructure to support this kind of growth. The right to self-determination is a tenet of democracy, as those who live in a community have the best understanding and most at stake. Meow, meow. I'll start that one again because it's kind of important. The right to self-determination is a tenet of democracy, as those who live in a community have the best understanding and most at stake in what happens in their own community. It's not just us. That's a good sign. Second thing, the Emergency Act that Joel had mentioned earlier. This has been updated this year. The definition of emergency not only includes accident, fire, explosion, technical failure, rioting, security threat, terrorist activity, which there was some talk that actually protesting would fit into that, force of nature, or a prescribed type of event. What does that mean? It now also includes the presence, or even just the suspected presence, of a transmissible disease. A prescribed type of event, or the presence of a suspected presence of prescribed circumstances. Like, what does that mean? And it requires the prompt coordination of action. Okay, here's your actions. The appropriate use or control of the use of any private property, authorizing the entry or prohibiting entry to your property without any warrant, the authorization to remove, demolish crops, trees, structures. It also prohibits, it can control or prohibit the travel to and from an area, carrying on of a business or an event, or requiring a person to stop doing an activity even if the person is licensed, permitted, and authorized to do so. In my case, I'm one of the fired nurses. I am prohibited from working in this province, even though everywhere else in this country we can, while we are in a critical staffing shortage. Also, the Lieutenant Governor and Council can make retroactive orders, legalizing actions that would have been previously illegal. And it gives immunity to all public service who implements these orders and gives protection to them against any kind of legal proceedings. I hope I am conveying to you the level of urgency for us to pay attention now. The good thing is that in some of our interactions with the board, now I'm not going to tell you that we're having a lot of influence. We have been emailing and inviting directors to town halls, and we're engaging with them, and they say at the meetings, "Oh, we're so happy you're here." And then they just ignore what we have to say, okay? I don't know how we're going to proceed. I am not here to lay this out for all of us and say this is what we're going to do, because I don't know what we're going to do. I do know that as we work together, we get the next step. And that's all we seem to be getting, is one step at a time. But I am getting members from the public who work for the RDCK or who have had interactions with them, they are feeding me kind of inside information. And I do have connections now possibly for legal assistance. But if we require legal assistance, the only way we could possibly pay for that is if we have all of us, right? $10 each, and then we have somebody who at least can hold them accountable. That's a possibility in the future. I don't know how things will transpire in the meantime, but the ability for us to know what's going on and that we start getting engaged, and the fact that when 60 people showed up at one meeting, they stopped what they were doing. Now, during the board meeting, I have interacted with Dan Seguin, who is in this sustainability crowd, which, I mean, that's one department we think could go. But the municipal government was responsible to create a report that would be sent back to the provincial government, giving them feedback on this Emergency Act. So this was the report that was given to the board members in December, and there's a few statements that he made in here that I think are worthwhile sharing with you. He informed the board that it was in 2018 that BC adopted the United Nations Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which outlines the international best addresses to address and reduce disaster risk. So our provincial government is using international guidelines to determine what we should do in an emergency. We also have a statement by him, which was very helpful, I thought. First off, he states that the amount of work that's going to be involved to create all of these new enforcements for the emergencies is going to require a huge amount of staff, and the money around it is going to be difficult to justify. We also have, I like this statement. Furthermore, residents could perceive these regulations as being overreach of the government. Without clear provincial guidelines, this shift could lead to contentious situations. I think that's legitimate. And I'm hoping that we don't enter that kind of season that is going to cause unrest. And that is why, back to the beginning of the evening, when I brought our attention to who we are, what kind of people do we want to be, how do we create connection with our neighbors, the only way to survive civil unrest is if we respect each other and know that our survival rests on the abilities that each one of us brings to the table. What do we do from here? You know, we're going to keep hounding them. We're going to make sure that the microscope is on. We're going to make sure we keep communicating to you. There is budget meetings coming up in February, and it will be brought out to the public for their input. We need to participate in those. We need to show up. For instance, the newspaper just reported that because they have such a staffing issue in the waste transfer area, they've decided to create 3 more managerial positions at $288,000. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not getting this. Then I got it. Because what they are doing, everything about how the RDCK spends money is they have different budgets for all these different expenses. And so what they're doing is they are inflating a budget with no justification for it, but then they can tax you more money to cover the cost of that. So we are in a position where this is extortion, the amount of money that they are taking from us and what we're getting back from that. This will only stop as we do one step at a time, find out what they're doing. You get inside information. My email's back there. You email me and you tell me because I'm connecting the right people together, and we're going to do something about this. I think you guys all recognize that there are people here who are action people. And so get behind them. Not everybody can be. I get that. I'm not asking you to do something you cannot do. But for those that are stepping out on the front lines, give them some support. Help them out. It's not a fun job. I'll tell you, it's not a fun job. It's very uncomfortable. It takes a lot of inner work to keep yourself so that it doesn't become overwhelming. But at the same time, I have never felt such energy for something so incredibly important. And what I have noted is they weren't able to mandate boosters. There is no more Vax passport. And so even with things looking like they're moving forward to continue to oppress us, there's something going on under the covers that is pushing back. And that happened because of us. So don't underestimate your own power. Okay, that's it from me. We're going to move into, that's okay. We're going to move into public discussion because it's super important that people have the ability to be able to talk. But I do have to put a few restrictions on it. There are a massive amount of topics, and I appreciate that there's lots of things that people are looking at. Tonight is based on local government, provincial government, things happening in your own community. So can we focus the topics on that? If you're welcome to comments or questions. If you could keep it to 3-4 minutes, that would be great, just so that we could have as much opportunity as possible. So I'm just going to open that up, and feel free to come and share your story or your thoughts. And otherwise, tonight, if you could find 3 people that you don't know and just go introduce yourself, because the most important thing of this is getting to know each other.
I have a question for you. In listening to you, mentioned Bill 41. Is that the one you were talking about? Is that
44? The
Bill
development
44. I'm
one?
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if this is being implemented from the province, then really what power does the regional areas even have if that's coming from a provincial top-down level? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, really, do we even have any say or any power at all?
So I'll give you one example. In Castlegar right now, they have a building called the Pioneer Arena that is used as a skating rink. The RDCK has joined up with the economic development crowd and the city of Castlegar, and they want to demolish that arena and build a healthcare facility with housing above it. Healthcare and housing are not local municipal jurisdiction. Every level of government has to stay in their own lane. What we have occurring is jurisdiction creep. So we have now the RDCK taking on a project it has no business being in. It doesn't have the legal authority to be in. It's not even managing its own building department well without taking on responsibilities it has no right to be in. That community is now pushing back. There's lots of petitions. It's gone into the newspaper. There's resistance. And what you have to do is be engaging with your directors, telling them that you know what's going on and this has to stop. There has to be pressure from the public. Now, we engage respectfully, but we do need to engage. They need to feel that if they proceed with certain decisions, that they know they are not representing the people. So how that interaction has to take place, you have to create that. Just maintain being respectful, because these are people that are actually trying to work on our behalf, but maybe don't understand how complex the problems are. But they have to have the support of their people in order to stand their ground. It's very hard to take a position if there's nobody behind you. So get behind your director, make sure they know, make sure they understand, tell them that you demand that the votes be recorded, because we need to watch. That's one. Yes.
I've been hearing talk about property taxes and paying the property taxes into a trust. I have no knowledge or understanding of what that really means. And we would pay it in there, and it would not go to the town, I guess, until they satisfied certain things. Do you have any knowledge about that? Has it been done in Canada, the legalities of it? Just wanted to see what you comment on that. Thank you.
I don't have any accurate information of anyone that has successfully done that. It is definitely a possibility in terms of at what point do the people decide to stop financing oppression. So in the process, we have, and the whole legal system is also very problematic right now. We are having judges appointed based on minority checkboxes, not on competency. We have a legal system that is constipated. And I think we're even beyond the point of being able to disimpact. I think it's going to take surgical removal. I don't know how this is going to play out. We have 2 court cases currently happening right now where they are holding Bonnie Henry to account in that she was using powers that she didn't have the authorization to do. So that has to play out. There, again, law is kind of like healthcare. If you have somebody who has cancer, you need to go to an oncologist. If you need a bowel surgery, you go to a surgeon. It's the same with law. They all have their specialties, and there's different competencies within those specialties. So I personally right now have 4 lawyers on my contact list, but they are civil, their employment, their rights, and I forget what the other one is. I don't yet have the municipal one, although I will tell you this. Josh Schmink, who used to be a director, was at the last December meeting. He was sitting as alternate for one of the other directors. And I had a 4-minute chat with him where he told me that he had sued the RDCK years ago and won. and he gave me the name of that municipal lawyer. So we're in process of following up just to have contacts, okay? So we are working through this process slowly, but it is obviously people who are having to learn this on the fly. So yes, good idea. How can we do it to protect us? Still working on that.
So the last time we were here, we spoke about the accountability of some of our municipal people. It was the focus of the meeting at that time, and it was noted that our oaths the oaths of the elected officials within our regional districts and our municipalities may give oaths to outside of the purview of the people. Have we done any further, like looking into how these oaths have been usurped, and what these people are actually, maybe they're not accountable to the people at all, and that might be the number one problem that we're all facing, because it seems like all these regulations they're coming at us from a high, from outside of our regions, from outside of our country in some ways. The Climate Action Plan is a great example of. Our regional members don't even know what when they brought it to the forefront, there was more questions than answers, right? When you're talking about that. So I guess the question is, has that come up? I know it's come up in our community, and I don't know if was there any follow-up to the November 30th deadline that we had given our council, and was there a follow-up to that?
I'm not sure, but we received quite a bit of documentation.
Okay.
Ms. Maddox knows about that.
So is that a theme throughout the region, I guess, is my question.
I guess I'm going to come from a different point of view, because I can't answer it in the way that you have offered it. And that's because even on a basic fundamental level of the laws that are in place, they are useless because nobody's enforcing them. So if you don't have enforcement of basic law, I don't know how you can move into more complex systems, because you're going to have the same problem. There's no way to enforce it. And I'll give you a quick example. So I'm aware in the last few months in Nelson of 2 physical assaults. One was a baseball bat versus man who ended up in ICU with 2 broken arms, rib cage, and head injuries. And another was a woman who was attacked and beat in the head with physical injuries. In both cases, the police would not press charges. So again, when I say we are in an urgent time frame, it's because it's not just on how they're spending our money, but the protective mechanisms are not being enforced. Now this becomes I can appreciate you guys, this is very overwhelming when we see all of the deficiencies of what is occurring, and then how do we fight back on that kind of level. All I can say is, because so many of us have been called to do it, that there's a reason. And so we're stepping up. All I know is when it comes to me being able to participate with you and bring matters to your attention, and then when you engage with whatever challenges are going to come up, you're going to know that there are people alongside of you who are doing everything they can to ensure that we as a human race still remain human. But I'm not going to tell you that we're going to come out of this successfully. All I know is I'm not responsible for the outcome. I'm responsible to show up and participate and let spirit activate how it wants, because this is not something we can do on just a human level. But I will tell you that the magnificent interaction that I personally am experiencing with spirit realm tells me that there's assistance for us. So my answer to your question is, how do we have honor as humans? If there is a law that says that you have the right to personal autonomy, I am to honor that. I am not to harass you or mandate you or belittle you because you didn't do what somebody told you to do. And our ability to honor other humans, even when they do things that we don't agree with, is the only way we're going to come out of this. So that's all I can leave you with.
Thank you.
Can I answer the gentleman's question regarding the mayor's?
Can't hear you.
I'm Nora Maddox, and I just had dealings with our mayor via email. Everything's recorded. I sent a submission in November regarding our issues here that we've been discussing, and asked very pointed questions that I wanted him to respond to. That was around in the beginning of November. I never heard anything, and on December the 12th, I sent him an email and told him that I was very curious as to why I hadn't even received an acknowledgement that they'd received it. And the next day I got a response, said he was very sorry, that things were very hectic at Town Hall. And I thought to myself, they must be, you have your councillors quitting, etc. I didn't say that to him, but I thought it. So anyway, he asked me what questions need to be asked, because I sent him 244 pages of links and documentation regarding all the various subjects from government sites, provincial, federal, etc. So they were all credible. So I wrote back and I said the questions are very pointed, they're in the body of the letter. So I got a response back in which he said that I could go on site and I could find out all of the answers by going through all of the various sites that the municipality has. So I wrote back and I said I think I deserved the respect that they should answer those questions because they're explicit. And I need the answers and the residents need the answers. And he responded, he's not going to. He said he won't deal with people that think it's a carbon hoax. His vision of climate change is much different than ours. He also said that he, the councillors and the staff and the majority of people in Creston believed in climate change. I wrote back and I challenged him to prove that by a referendum. His response was very pointed. He has no intention of dealing with any of us, and he included all of us, who think that climate change is a hoax. He's not looking at the two different versions of climate change. He's believing the United Nations claim. He also assured me, because one of the questions was regarding them working under the United Nations, that they had no contracts, they didn't work for the United Nations. Yet if anyone looks at the covenant that they sign, and every one of them did, the very last speaks of the United Nations. And I've got a copy of that if anybody would like to see it at any time. Just give me a call. And everything that I talk about, I have the documentation, the legal copies of whatever I speak of. I will not speak if I don't know the answer, and I can assure you that.
Would I be able to just give a little bit of feedback to help your process? It does not. It's not useful to send documents at large. They will not look at them.
Well,
if you can do 20 people and you all pick one question and send it in, you will have much more impact.
I had 6 questions. That's all.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you send it out from different people, keep it to one question, then they will they just generally do respond that way. And they're also seeing that there's more people involved in the
they know
questioning
there's more
process.
people involved because they were at the meetings, Corinne. So they know.
Okay.
They're totally, and the reason I sent all the documentations is I sent notice of.
That's okay.
Okay,
well,
I sent that, and I wanted them to have all of that information so they cannot say any time in the future they were not aware. Okay?
Fair enough. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for telling everyone.
She might have answered my question, but what I want to know is, I'm not the leader that some people are here. I want to be able to help, but I have no idea what to do. I guess I'm asking the room, what can I do to help? Like, I don't know. Maybe you can answer, maybe someone else can answer. What can I do?
This is part of the process. And I'm going to tell you my perspective, what I do with people who come to me with that same request is, unfortunately, it's not my job to tell you what to do. This is part of our journey as individuals in this experience that we're having. Is the most important thing that you're going to discover in this is who you are. And so when you start engaging with different groups or different subjects, you are going to start to see within yourself, either you feel an activation inside, a hum, or you don't. You feel a nothing. That's your guidance system. So anything where you feel, keep following that direction. You will find what you are to do. But first off, you have to find yourself. And no one else can do that for you. So I'd love to be able to assign everyone a task. That's not our job. Our job is to empower you so that you fundamentally know who you are, because that is the only place that you will be able to stand.
Just quickly, for anybody who wants to go to the next budget meeting, the RDC budget meeting, last year's meeting, while I had emailed the CFO probably about a week before the meeting to get a download of the budget, because obviously it's a huge budget, we got it the day before the meeting. Actually, I was able to print it off the morning of the meeting and quickly highlight through. The other thing is that the meeting should be, perhaps we can request of our RDCK reps, the meeting be specifically designated for public input of the meeting. It was a public consultation, and we were shut down for asking pointed questions about the different budget lines. So that's something everybody can do, is come to the meeting.
I'm also going to say that financial statements are a language all their own, and I get it that not everybody understands what's going on in there. Judy has connections. I actually went door knocking on businesses today and talked to a few accountants, and some of them were actually quite interested in what's going on. Even if you have to find accountants to sit down with you and start going through things to help you understand, it is important. This is something that has to be learned. I get it that it's challenging, But there are people who can explain it to you in a simple way and that are able to identify if there's discrepancies or expenses that seem unreasonable. And because every area has their own expenses, Creston is one of the highest in terms of your recreation costs and your water services. You have a lot more expense categories than, say, what's in mine. So it becomes increasingly complex, but you do have people in your community with those skills, and you need to utilize them.
Hi, I'm Jean Blackstock. I have a place out in Canyon. I also have a job in Calgary, so I work there as well. I appreciate that you are advocating for people to get more involved. I think that's wonderful. I've heard a few things tonight, though, that I just want to get clarified, as usual. So one of the things is, I do want to make a comment about Canada in general, that we are considered one of the freest countries in the world, and that there are opportunities to be engaged in democracy, which I believe there still is a democracy in this country. And yeah, you may not, but I do. One of the things you did say...
We are going to show respect, so I appreciate there's lots of opinions, but please feel free to speak.
And personally, I'm 66 years old, and I have taken advantage of advocating. I've spoken at budget talks in Calgary. I've been involved in many elections where maybe my person won, maybe my person lost, but I do have the opportunity to go and speak with that person, the MLA, the MP, the regional district of East Kootenay, or regional district of Central Kootenay. I can go and speak to those people and have my concerns raised. And I believe that is part of democracy, and that is part of what you're talking about, what we should do. So, but one of the things you did say tonight that maybe I got wrong was that the RDCK has overrides municipal governments. And I don't believe that's true. My idea of the RDCK or the RDEK is that the municipal government, the RDCK is a board, and the municipalities, so Creston, have representatives to that board. It's not like the RDCK lords over that municipality, because I don't believe they do, but that's something sort of I thought you said tonight.
So the RDCK is the local municipal level. That it is the umbrella. And under the umbrella, every municipality, town, city comes under their ultimate jurisdiction. So there are a couple of things that the RDCK is legally responsible for. That's waste management and emergency services. Your municipalities will take on other realms of responsibility, but in your taxes, you will note that not only are you paying to your city, you are also paying to the regional district.
For those specific...
right. Services.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that I got that right. The other thing that was mentioned tonight was about the wars that are going on in this world. And it was sort of said that it was people that were rising up regarding civil disobedience. And maybe in Israel, maybe that is true, but I don't believe that's true at all in the Ukraine and the Russian war. I believe the Russian war...
I didn't say that it was a result of civil disobedience. I said it was because of a fracturing in relationships between humans, where they...
See, I don't believe that's true in Russia and the Ukraine. So
I think
I just wanted you to hear that I didn't believe that.
Okay.
Anyway,
And I'll give you just a couple more minutes, okay?
I
Because
do.
there's a lineup.
I do. I just have
2 more minutes.
Okay, there was a man who spoke, this man. He said a lot of things, and some of the things that he said, I felt, he talked about Warren Buffett, he talked about the Federal Reserve, he talked about problems as a result of those. And to me, those are American problems. I know that they may have some...
Please, you guys, please, honestly, we have to practice this, okay?
But
Here's your
when
chance.
you are talking about the overnight, the Federal Reserve, we have our own banking system. And we were quite lucky to have our own banking system, that we are not allowed to just, banks are not allowed to just keep lending and lending and lending. And that's happened in 2008 in the United States. And we were saved from that, basically. So I feel a little bit strongly that some of the things that were said tonight applied more to Americans than Canadians.
Okay,
but the other thing
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have
Can
to...
I just say one more thing?
I'm sorry. There are 4 other people that would like to speak.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. All right, come on forward, sir.
Hi, Paul Hutchison. Just to remind people, I think a lot of people know this, but when we had the event here about the climate fraud in Creston, I asked the mayor 2 questions. I said, if we had a referendum, if we had a gathering such as this and requested the RDCK to come so that we can ask you questions and discuss issues, would you come? He said no, the current mayor. The next question was, if we had a referendum and the majority of Creston did not want to move forward with it, would you do it anyway? He said yes. So if the voting system is not corrupted, then when we vote these people in, they have real power, and we've given it to them. I mean, there may be other factors involved here, but so your vote does matter. So please make sure you do that. Thank you.
And it's also really important to start figuring out what your comfort level is. Right now in Germany, I think January 8th is the date that's set that the whole country is going to go on strike. And the people have just decided enough. And so in our province, I have proof that the NDP government has paid off of our union, paid our union off, to the degree in the next few years that they're going to be getting $500 million of your taxpayer money to the union for the purpose of 12 people that they've appointed to administer it. Our unions have been compromised. And so we will have to determine what our tolerance level is and how we're going to respond. Please.
First of all, I'd just like to thank Jean for coming, speaking up, because I think we all need the practice to listen to people with other opinions. I think what we might be surprised at is we might have a lot more common values than we think, but we might have different opinions. And what I came up to share was I'm on the East Shore in Crawford Bay. I've been in the Kootenays 30 years, but only in this area in the last not quite 2 years. A few of us met yesterday, and one thing I think all of us know is numbers make a difference. And so what we're looking at doing in our own community, which has been quite well known to be a tight community. I haven't always been on the East Shore, but I've been in the Kootenays. And what the Kootenays is renowned for are tight communities. And I'm sorry, Jean, but I would have to argue that I have contacts all over the Kootenay communities, and they've all been fractured in the last few years. So what we're looking at, and what we were talking about yesterday, is how do we bring our community back together? How do we go from maybe a fractured community to a fractal heart. How do we come back into our heart? And I'd like to just reiterate that again and again, that is our practice, is to come back into the heart. So what we came up with yesterday is we're looking at organizing a community meeting, and we want to invite everybody, make it welcome for everybody. And what we're asking for is community input on what people are thinking about, what are people's questions, what are people's concerns in this world that we all find ourselves in right now. And I just wanted to share that because I know I need the practice. I know that I have gravitated towards like-minded people in the last few years, and I've let go with love of a lot of relationships in my life. But we do need to come back together as community. And language is huge. And this is with no disrespect, because our words are being weaponized. Humanity is under attack, my perception. But our words have so much power. For example, thank you, Joel. I prefer to call myself a freedom lover than a freedom fighter. And I also am very mindful about my language when I'm talking to people. So, of course, with like-minded people, we can talk about the climate hoax or the carbon hoax or all those different things. And I'm not saying I have the answers. But I'm asking each of us to really look at the language that we use and see to try to bring people back together. And I guess because a few of us met and we're all here tonight talking about this meeting, it's a really good opportunity to reflect on that, how we talk to each other. And I just want to thank you, Corrine, and everybody actually that's here, but I really want to thank you, Corrine, because I have watched you over the last few years just come more and more grounded into your calling, and your message is so clear, and you're really embodying something that is inspiring to me, and I think all of us.
Hi, my name is Tilly. My name is Tilly. It's actually very interesting to hear that. Thank you for the previous person. I just got notification yesterday, and I think a lot of other people may have seen this, but I want to reiterate it here. For those who are in Erickson, there's an Erickson Community Association meeting. The Erickson Community Association has disbanded a few years ago, so it's wonderful that they're now coming back, or we're trying to bring it back. So if anybody from Erickson would like to be part of the Erickson Community Association, we're going to meet on the 10th of January from 7 to 9 at the Erickson School. So again, bringing questions, suggestions, and ideas, and trying to make this community live again.
Thank you.
No camera, please. Yeah. I just thought maybe for once, why don't we try something new? How about nobody votes? What would they do if everybody stood up and just not even voted?
Do you think that that's realistic?
We would find out if they actually count the votes of people or not.
And what would be the possible repercussions of that decision?
They would realize that we're not going to put up with any more shit.
Or all of the agendas that are now in play come in unopposed. So it's a risk level that I'm sure many are considering. And again, it's always your choice. What you feel is right for you, that's all we're saying is all of us need to take responsibility for how we act, how we behave when it comes to our society, our political, our cultural environment. It's going to be up to you what you decide to do, and everyone else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Awesome, thank you.
I appreciate the creativity. I think for many of us, our risk level is not there.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good evening. Ted. T-E-D. Ted. What's funny? Thank you all for speaking, by the way. I won't keep you long. Just on the thing that's become called climate change. Climate change is not what they're talking about. Climate change is tectonic activity, volcanic activity, and the tilt of the Earth. That's it, in a nutshell. Global warming should be measured over a period of at least 100 years. So I researched this online. What got me going was the letter in the newspaper, The Advance, from RDCK and all that, and the dysfunction they've created. They're trying to divide, and they did that with the pandemic. So I looked at the UN's role, and they're corrupt. They've received good scientific reports, and they've changed the context seriously many times. And they were caught with 5,000 emails from the UK Met Office to a US Met Office. They're all concerned. They're all concerned about what's going on. So it's got to be stopped. And I look at their jurisdiction. In the paper, the RDCK said, we are going to follow what the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says. So they're modeling at that. They have no jurisdiction to do that. We are a sovereign nation. We shouldn't be listening to the United Nations. And all they want is our money. Getting back to local stuff, at the 2007 UBCM, the Union of BC Municipalities, the BC Climate Action Charter was agreed to in a voluntary manner. So all municipalities, not all of them, but most of them agreed to volunteer to follow this agreement. And at a conference, not locally, to discuss it with the taxpayers and the citizens of this province. And for me, I can't find it, but nothing has changed since then until now. And now they're trying to remedy this by putting it through RDCK and vote on it to make this BC Climate Action Charter legal without discussion with us. They have been going around, but they've just dealing with people one-on-one now, which is not on. That's divide and rule. This is so important. This is, in a nutshell, is the most important thing in our lifetime. And it's got to be stopped, because it is a hoax. And we in the grassroots of Kootenay, can declare it as a hoax and get them to realize that. That's the trick. Get our local council to realize that it is a hoax and backpedal on all this stuff, because we can't afford it.
Okay, so there's two things I'm going to say here. You guys actually have two open positions on your council right now. Who have you chosen to fill those positions? And you need to start being a little bit more intentional about what kind of people that you want to represent you. So I'm going to put that on you. That is your responsibility over the next 2 weeks to start identifying people who are going to be able to take on that position of leadership and help influence in things that are representing you. Okay? Second thing, there was a report from BC Hydro that came out just last week. They're just letting the province know that we are only able to produce 80% of the electrical requirements that we need. 20% of what we need right now, we have to purchase from Alberta and the States, and a lot of that is coal generated. Right now, the building code is taking out all access to natural gas, appliances, efficiency, heating, anything. There's a push on for electric vehicles. Danielle Smith from Alberta said last week, people need to prepare because the production of gas-powered vehicles is going down. You need to get your vehicle now. You need to find ways that you can sustain your energy needs, because there is coming a pressure point where all of the demands now, we are becoming dependent on one source of energy that we do not have the resources for. So This is again part of the part where we each individually have to start taking care of ourselves, because the dynamics that are now getting put into place are going to make it very difficult for people to survive. Okay? I just wanted to throw that in too.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just conclude. Thank you very much. Yes. But I really think it's fine to say that, but I really think we need some help. And my advice would be not through lawyers, but through the Ombuds office. I've got some experience with dealing with them in my previous life, and they're very good at doing investigations, very good, and they're very impartial.
So can I tell you my experience? So last May, somebody sent me an internal email from Interior Health with the CEO, Susan Brown, who was letting all of the employees know that the provincial government was now enforcing the PIDA Act, which is the Public Information Disclosure Act, through different parts of government. It started in 2019, and every 6 months they were rolling out this act to a new sector. And in June, it was going to apply to health authorities. The point of that was that any employee or former employee could report any action that the health authority is doing that needed investigation. They had created this whistleblower policy to protect employees so that there would be no repercussions, and the statement was that this will be great for the public because we're going to ensure transparency and accountability. I phoned the ombudsperson's office because I submitted a year ago, July, a 300-page complaint of the health authorities to the ombudsperson's office, because it was the health authorities that determined to terminate employees. It was not Bonnie Henry. I had internal emails from Interior Health that were showing all the critical staffing shortages and the services that the public was being denied because they didn't have staff. I had all the call-outs showing all the vacant lines. And the reality was, it was the health authorities that were causing a reduction of services to the public. I asked where that complaint was. It was still sitting on the desk of the person that it landed on. I asked to be transferred to the PIDA department. I had an hour-long conversation with that officer to determine if my complaint fit into that category. It was determined that it was. I then asked, how do you enforce your recommendations? And I was told, we can't. I said, so let me get this clear. You receive a legitimate complaint, you have the evidence, you do an investigation, you create a report, and you have recommendations, but nobody has to do what you say. And she said, that is correct. And that is what is happening.
But it does expose things. And that can be exposed to the newspapers, and that's the next step. Well.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so much for climate change.
So 3 quick things. One is, if she's willing, I'd like to nominate Nora for town council. Secondly, I think we all want unity, but there are times where unity is impossible because one side doesn't want it. We see that what happened with the truckers and the people who try to support them in their bank accounts. If you oppose them, they will try to sideline you. If you're effective, they want to destroy you. That's just the truth. So we have to, there's strength in numbers. We have to organize better. And the last thing is, I'd like to talk to anyone who's interested in possibly putting together some citizen journalism, going to town hall, talking to officials. But we have to develop something for print, but we need a few people to lay the foundation for that. So anyone interested, please touch base afterward. Thank you.
Sorry, what's your first name?
Paul.
Paul?
They call me Rally Paul.
Okay.
I do the rallies.
Do you guys all know him? You know how to find him? Okay, good.
Hi there. My name is Lucille, and I just want to say to the Erickson residents here, if you want to sign up for the Erickson Community Association email sign up on this board at the back. So if you're interested in joining that association that Tilly just mentioned. And the second thing is that everybody received one of these pamphlets in their mail. It says local government and your taxes. And if you don't recall getting it, there is some at the back, and it's well worth reading, put together by yours truly, Kootenai Tribe. Okay, thank you. And thanks to everybody who showed up tonight.
Thank you, Corrine, for bringing us together in this beautiful sanctuary. I just want to come with some encouragement. We've heard how politicians, the government won't help the people. Even when they're there for the people, they'll not do the work of the people. One thing I want to say, we're in this church, this sanctuary. Whether you're spiritual or not, whether you believe in God or not, I believe in God. We are created free. I'm created free. Freedom is who I am. Freedom is who we are. We all come to this area. Whether we live in the city, we live in the small communities, or live in the country, we all want to be free. We all want to do our own things. We do not want to be controlled. And the longer we go on and not do anything, we will be controlled. We need to come together and rise. We need to rise as a people. And until we do that, nothing is going to change. It's when we rise as a community, because we're doing it for our children. We're doing it for our loved ones. We got to rise up. We're in this church. Can I get an amen? Amen. We need to rise as a community. And that's what needs to happen. We don't need to wait for another election. We might not get the results we want because they're not for the people. How many times have we heard speakers say, answer that the government will not, the mayor will not respond. He will not do this, he will not do that. Corinne have said it, other speakers have said it. So what are we waiting for? We got to be ready and to rise. That's the only time anything has ever happened in nations is when the people rise. Look what happened in the Netherlands, in other parts of the world. The people rise and come together. Are you ready to rise? Amen.
Okay, I'm actually, okay, quick.
I promise it won't be as long this time. First on, sir, thank you. That was beautiful. And yeah, you're right. Rising up means more than just voting. There's certain things called parallel economies that need to be built, need to be developed. They run on different principles. They run on things like barter networks, local currencies, community banking, time banking. There's all sorts of ideas that you can do that, together, working together at different parts and aspects. We all bring different skill sets, different networks, different assets that can work together and be brought together to rise up. And that was a beautiful message, sir. Thank you for that. To the first gentleman who mentioned the question about the oaths, I'm just going to add to that very quickly. The question about the oaths, I would best describe the difficulty we have in trying to catch them in midair, because they play hot potato. Whether they're passing it between jurisdictions or passing it off to the bureaucracy, creating new legislation that basically defers any responsibility. You want to try and catch them in their oaths, there's going to probably be something written or some other jurisdiction that they can point to, and you can spend months trying to trace that, and it's going to be like trying to chart the flight path of a housefly. If you can do it, great. And if we can hold people accountable that way, by all means. But you know, let's be honest. They've got their ways and means. That's how they've been getting away with stuff for a long, long time. Second, to the woman who came up asking what to do, Corrine was right. You know, follow your heart. But I'd also say, as you look around, there's a lot of different aspects that you could possibly get involved in, a lot of different avenues to fight for freedom, a lot of different topics. Find the one that speaks to you the most and read as much as you can. Learn all sides about it. Try and become an expert within the community on that subject, because nobody can know it all. I may talk a lot, but I don't know much. And so I, Corrine, everybody here, we all rely on different people to have different knowledges and different expertise. So if there's something that really, really is a particular issue, whatever it is, learn as much about it as you can and put that knowledge on offer for everybody else. As for the criticism of me for maybe using some American examples, they're our next door neighbor. They're our largest trading partner. They provide our NORAD and the bulk of our national security. If they sneeze, we go flying. They roll over, we get squished. If we don't take into consideration what's happening down there, I mean, it's a tidal wave coming at us, and we don't know. Our banks actually did get bailed out. So, anyways, nothing. You know, if you got any questions about that, I can produce the evidence, but just not right here. I didn't come here to cite sources. The other thing is, yeah, you're right. Language is important. But if you're only going to suggest that we use their language rather than developing our own discourse, then they are going to frame the problem and offer the only solution available. We have to create our own language. And if I say I'm a freedom fighter, it's because I'm a freedom lover so much that I'm willing to fight for it. And just a little side note, in 1972, there was a UN meeting in Vancouver. And at that, you can go dig it up, but effectively it was decided at that point that the environment was going to be become the new context for implementing social and political change. Read into that what you want. Cheers.
Wait for us to get some good advice first, okay? We're not going to make decisions that are not well thought out, because you just create more problems. So I get it. Let's find some sound advice. So if anybody has contacts, send them to us. Yes, and if you're okay, this will be our last comment, because we're kind of, I think everybody's butts are getting numb. So I'll just say thank you for your considerate, intentional spirit that you brought here tonight, and please.
Yeah, it feels good to stand. Yeah. I just want to say something about presence and how important. I think that's the biggest thing we can do. Like the woman who asked, she says, what can I do? Be present. Just be here, be there, be everywhere you can be where there's a public gathering, because we are being watched. Yes. And that can work both ways. Yep. Thanks.
I was just putting on potlucks every 3 weeks at my house and inviting my community. And that's how I found magnificent people. So again, this is really, what is it that you enjoy doing, and follow that, because that's where you're going to find meaning, purpose, happiness, and the fulfillment of what you were destined for. So thank you. Blessings on all of you, and we'll see you on the front lines.